Okay, so here's another car vlog. As I've said before, that I have started to experimenting with Macs and extending the functionality of my iOS devices with my Mac. So I use my iOS devices together with my Mac in new innovative ways at the moment. I love all these remote apps. For example, Splash Top, that makes it possible to have your complete Mac in your pocket. You can have it on your iPhone or your iPad, for example, and you have your complete Mac in your iOS device, and it's really fast without any lag at all. So I can even use a touch interface for OS X. So I use my fingers and using touch and OS X on my Mac. So it's quite cool to be able to do anything on my Mac even when I'm not home. For example, now in my car, if I would like to, I could start a download on my Mac, for example, on my iPad or on my iPhone, for example. So I can remote control my complete Mac. But it's more than that, because it's actually running OS X on your iOS device. It feels like that. It feels like you're running OS X on your iOS device. And Splash Top is only one of all these remote apps. There is so many different remote apps for iOS that is working together with your Mac and your iOS device. I really like it. So now I'm on the highway again, so the sound from the car is quite high here. The noise is quite high. Another really cool remote app that I use a lot is ProCut X. It's a remote app for Final Cut Pro 10 on your Mac, so you can edit videos on your iPad, but you are using Final Cut Pro 10. So that's awesome for me too, because I have a Mac, an old MacBook Air from 2012, connected to my 40-inch HD TV at home in my living room. And I don't use that Mac as a normal computer anymore. It's used for media and so on, as a media center and a HD PC, for example. So I don't have a keyboard or mouse to it. I only use my iOS devices together with a MacBook. So if I want to watch a movie, for example, I start my iPhone and start up Mobile Mouse Pro on my iPhone and use that as a remote app for my Mac. So I can have a touchpad and a keyboard on my iPhone and use that touchpad and keyboard on my Mac and with my Mac. So I can type in a search keyword in Safari, for example, and it gets searched on my Mac, and I see the results on my HD TV, and I can click on it using my iPhone. And this is really fast and very easy to do, so no problem doing this. So with Mobile Mouse Pro, I can have a remote app that makes it possible to have a mouse and a keyboard together with my Mac. So I don't have any physical keyboard or mouse. And I can also choose which keyboard I want to use. So I use SwiftKey on my Mac. So I can use SwiftKey together with my Mac when typing. I can write complete articles if I want and so on. I can, for example, write an article on my phone and paste it in my blogging editor on my Mac if I want. So this is really awesome. And ProCut X, for example, that I said I use for editing Final Cut Pro videos in Final Cut Pro. It's perfect to use together because I have a scrub wheel in ProCut X that makes it possible to scrub the video forward and rewind frame by frame and so on, so I can cut videos exactly where I want to. Works really great. and it's really fast to zoom in and out and delete clips and add clips and so on with ProCut X, especially on my iPad. I really love it on my iPad. These apps makes it so it feels like I'm using my iPad or iPhone. So I can use these very powerful apps on my Mac, but it feels like that. It feels like I'm using it on my iOS devices. That's what's so good with it. I really love that. So the reason why I want to experimenting with using my Mac together with my iPhone is actually to extend the use of my iOS devices. I basically still use only iOS devices, but now I have extended the features and the power and the apps to the Mac too. So I can use the Mac to do video rendering, for example, but it feels like I'm doing it on my iPad. So I can sit there in the living room, for example. I'm working on my iPad and the iPhone, but I'm using the power of the Mac. These remote apps though is quite expensive, and that's because they are so useful, I think, because it's really worth the money. So even if they are expensive, I think I can highly recommend buying them because they are so useful. If you already have a Mac, you can have so much use of these remote apps. So I can highly recommend start using remote apps for your Mac on your iOS devices. So for example, I am post PC. As I said, I'm post PC. I have been for 2 years, but now I've started using a computer again, but I'm using it through my iOS devices. So to me personally, it feels like I'm still post PC. I'm just having more features and more power now. And as I've shown before, I have proven that I don't need computers. I can do anything I want on my iPad and iPhone. So to run my whole business as a YouTuber and blogger, for example, and all the private stuff I do at home and so on, I don't need a real normal desktop computer, for example. I only need my iOS devices, nothing else. But as I've said before in another video, after I have proven that I don't need computers anymore, I think it's time to do something else and try different stuff and experimenting with other stuff. So that's why I've started using my Mac again in this very innovative way. So the only time I use my Mac is through my iOS devices, never directly. So I don't use, as I said, a keyboard or mouse. So I use it through my iPhone and iPad. So basically I looking at my iPad and iPhone, but I use the power of the Mac and the Mac apps, the more professional and more advanced apps that Macs can use. For example, Final Cut Pro 10, Logic Pro, and so on. And I really enjoy it. I think it's so awesome to be able to be in the middle of the woods, for example, and have my complete Mac on my iPhone or iPad. I don't need to have it with me, for example. I can just open my complete Mac in my iPhone and start something, for example, a download or anything or other stuff. I can start any app on my Mac and use my Mac through my iPhone or iPad. And it works so good even on 4G, so I don't even need Wi-Fi to use my Mac through my iPhone or iPad. So I only need 4G, LTE 4G. That's awesome. Okay, bye.